Welcome back to the Varsity Voices podcast, and today's a special one. 1 year ago, we hit record on our very first episode, and here we are, 12 months, 85 episodes, talking Chicago Catholic League football and the important topics in high school sports. Some debates, some hot takes, lots of amazing guests, and we're celebrating our 1 year anniversary. So whether you've been with us since day one or just recently started listening in, we can't thank you enough. The episode is all about looking back, sharing some behind the scenes stories, and maybe even giving a sneak peek of what's to come. So turn up the volume and celebrate 1 year of the Varsity Voices podcast with us.
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
All right, we're back, and here we are. Like I said, 1 year anniversary.
Happy birthday or happy anniversary?
I think happy anniversary is probably better, right? Yeah.
Probably.
So, yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to all of you as well. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Frevoletti. Other host, Dan Frevoletti, is here as well. And we also have Andrea Frevoletti, the third member of our team, who's probably most important member of our team because she does all the behind the scenes, all the wonderful artwork that you guys have seen and commented on, as well as a lot of our social media stuff. So, Andrea, thanks for agreeing to come on and show your face to our audience. What do you think?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're
very
welcome.
Exciting day.
Yes, it is a very exciting day. And Dan, did you think when we started this 1 year ago that this is kind of what it would turn into?
I didn't. I didn't think that. I think the most surprising thing to me is that we've been able to sustain and build on our original kind of plan in the off season, and be able to continue to have interesting topics, some notable guests that we've been able. I never thought that would happen. I didn't think we'd get responses from anybody to come on. So I think I love what it has become. It is more than what I had envisioned, initially when we first talked about it. But I'm super happy with the way it's gone. How about you?
It's definitely more than I anticipated. I mean, when you and I talked about doing this, and we talked about we were going to kind of focus on the Chicago Catholic League, which was good. But then as we kind of went through it, we also talked about there's kind of a natural evolution to what we're talking about and how it affects the Chicago Catholic League and how it affects high school sports. So I think it's kind of been a very natural evolution of what we've done over the course of time. I found it very interesting to cover some of the really kind of trending topics in high school sports that we've been able to do over time, and I think that's just added to the overall benefit or value of what we do as a podcast. I think our listeners like it. Andrea, you know some of the episodes that we've done, and the different types of episodes that we've done. And Dan and I, we always talk about what type of information or what type of episode really gets our listeners involved or gets our viewers involved. I mean, from your perspective and doing a lot of the work with social media, what do you see as far as the types of episodes that we've done and the number of listeners or interest there is in listeners?
I think your most popular episodes are the ones where you're actually breaking down the individual athletes themselves. So when you're talking about this quarterback or this wide receiver or this linebacker, like those are the episodes where you're talking about them. That piques their interest, that, they get tagged on social media, their family listens to it, their friends, their school. So those definitely to me seem like the ones that make the most sense of when you're talking about the individuals. The coach episodes, I think those are great. I think anytime, not that you two together aren't just great and everyone loves to listen to that, but when you have guests on, I think that really is like something different. And you're answering questions and you're asking the questions that some people probably want to know. So being able to talk about different rules and regulations within NIL and within like leagues and the new rules and all of that, I think that kind of dives in, and especially for some parents that may not have the time to understand it, but they want to know, well, why did this happen? Or why did this happen? You guys have kind of gotten to that place where you can explain it to people and you've done your research. And so you know what really is going on.
We're trusted advisors now.
Yeah,
We are very trusted.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Just
Andrea,
look at our faces.
Yes, right.
Very
Trustworthy.
trusting.
Do the
Yes.
numbers bear that out? What you think about episodes, and like when we talk about players, do the numbers show that we have more interactions and
absolutely likes? With your end of the season wrap up where you had your all team offense, it goes all team offense and all team defense, those posts were just on Instagram alone. I think one had over 12,000 views and one had over 10,000 views. So that alone, I think, just kind of proves that our little podcast and our little Instagram page had 10,000 plus views on 23,000 total plus views on just two little posts. So that's for sure like the biggest parameter that you can look at of talking about kids individually.
Yeah. So let's go back and listen to the intro of our very first episode.
Oh boy.
I'm sure you guys will enjoy this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Varsity Voices podcast, where we bring you information and the inside scoop about Chicago Catholic League football, but we'll sprinkle in some topics and info on high school football in Illinois as well. I'm Joe Frevaletti, one of your hosts. I'm an avid Illinois high school football fan, former player in the WSCC, West Suburban Catholic Conference, which dates me a bit. Former college player and former broadcaster for games in the East Suburban Catholic Conference and the Chicago Catholic League. If you're looking for some better credentials, let me introduce you to the other host for the podcast, and that's my brother, Dan Frevaletti.
Hey, Joe. Thank you. This is great. This is a lot of fun. Welcome, everyone, and I am happy to do this with you. I think it's a lot of fun. We've been talking about this for a while. I am a former coach. I coached just at Bennett Academy for the last 15 years. I was a player at Bennett back in the day, played at Northwestern long time ago, prior to a lot of the good stuff happening, but still counts. Still have the sheepskin. So feel pretty good. I love this conference. I think
all right, so there you go.
Wow.
What do you think? When I first listened to that or listened to it again, right? I don't think I've gone back and listened to that until the last couple of days when I was preparing for this. We sound so much different today versus then, but that makes sense, don't you think?
I do. I mean, we're more comfortable now. We'd never podcasted before,
right?
So we just said, let's do it. We didn't do any pre-episodes. We didn't do any just fake episodes with you and I. So there was literally no prep. Where there was little equipment. So the technology that we have, I don't know if I still sound like I'm screaming from the basement, but
you don't.
That's
you
how I felt like I sounded, in several episodes. I know that can still rear its ugly head sometimes, but I was frustrated with the audio for several weeks. But
right.
it was, what's kind of cool is that the initial thought, what we thought about and doing this and why we did it, we wanted to give more cohesive coverage. And especially on Friday nights, when the games were happening, I think when we talked about it initially, my thought was that, I remember coaching, getting in the car, listening to a radio station that would talk about the games that were happening on Friday night, just provide scores, maybe for a half an hour. And I loved it. And I hoped that they would mention us and our scores, and wondered if that was going to happen. So it would keep me listening. And that's gone away. And I know that with just what's happened in media, that there is not a ton. There's a lot of coverage, but and this is what you said. You put it perfect, Joe. It's fragmented. There's a lot that's all over the place, and you've got to have 1 million subscriptions and that. So our idea was to do something that we could have it together in one spot, and but we sound like novices, and I know we're not pros by any stretch now, but we definitely
Right.
sound like newbies. On
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we do. And I think technology does make a difference. And
Yeah.
I think you and I and Andrea as well, we've talked about this probably every week for the last year, whether it's getting a new microphone or whether it's getting closer, changing a setting here or there, figuring out the recording studio. Those were all things I didn't really think about when we first started. But you definitely listening to that can see where it was our very first episode for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
Andrea, what do you think listening to that clip? Very first 30 seconds of our podcast.
Definitely sound like pros now compared to that.
Good.
Come a long way.
Yeah, we have.
The right tool can make a big difference, right?
The right tool makes a
yeah.
big difference.
Sure
yes,
does.
and a little bit of experience makes a big difference too. The artwork, do you remember the artwork, Andrea, you put together for our first episode?
I do remember when Dan had said that, we were going to do this today. And I thought, how did I even get involved in this? And
Right.
because human nature for my own personality and to, not get involved in other things. But as you guys know, but Joe, you came out, you said you sent something to Dan and said, this will be our logo. And I thought, well, we can't let that happen because it just wasn't very good.
It was a bugle or something like that, right? Cone.
You could see cut lines, like you literally played with scissors and literally cut and paste on a piece of paper.
I think it was tape. It wasn't paste. It was tape.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, well, we can't have that. So let me take a stab at it. And, yes. So that I do remember trying to at least go off of your initial design in order to create your logo and create the first artwork that we did.
Well, you've gone way above and beyond my initial design, and I'm not even going to show that, what it was at the first time. But
there our design is our logo in the lower right-hand corner.
Right, right. You can see
which
that,
which is awesome. Very cool.
I like it.
The old school. It has the bugle, so there's the little you still have the high school feel with the old school microphone. I like it.
Right. So as we got started, Dan, we were talking about the different types of episodes that we might do other than just talking about the Chicago Catholic League football teams. And I remember you came up with the idea that you said, why don't we try and interview some of the coaches? And that's a great idea. Do you think you can get any of them on? Nope. And you said, well, what I'll do is I'll send them an email and we'll see what happens. Right. So we did over the course of the year have several coach interviews, and a lot of them went really well. Some of them were foretelling, right, regarding the season that came up. So let's listen in to a couple of these interviews. This is the interview with Nazareth head coach Tim Rocky.
Our first.
So we welcome 9-time state champion, 2024 Illinois High School Coaches Association Hall of Fame inductee, head coach of the reigning back-to-back 5A state champions, Nazareth Academy Roadrunners, Tim Rackey. Coach, thanks for joining me today.
Dan, it's great catching up with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for being on. So I went back to October 21st of last year, which was selection day for the IHSA playoffs. And looking what has happened for your program and for you professionally is incredible. It's an 8-month run that is just unparalleled. Let me just go through this real quickly. So you make the playoffs at 4-5. You go on a great run, culminating in your 9th state championship at the end of November, becoming the first team, non-10-win team, to accomplish that feat. In March, you get inducted into the IHSCA Hall of Fame. In April, your former QB, J.J. McCarthy, is drafted in the top 10 of the NFL by the Minnesota Vikings. What's that time been like for you?
Well, the football gods are certainly smiling on me this past year, and they certainly do during the playoffs. It's been, it's been a blessing. It's been very humbling. I've always been because of how I was raised, a strong sense of humility. And as you played football at a high level and for many years, and
So anyway, that's Coach Racky, and a great. When I look back at that, I thought, we probably couldn't have picked a better first interview than Coach Racky. What do you think, Dan?
I remember, and it just came back to me while we were, listening to it, is that I remember hanging up or getting offline and just being so excited because I thought it went so well, and it did. He was awesome. I thought he was so forthcoming, and went through a lot of stuff about what he does as a coach and how he prepares a team and some of his core beliefs. And I just remember thinking that went way better than I could have hoped for. So it was a great way. And I'm glad it was, because had I, fumbled it, who knows if we would have been able to get other coaches on. But I thought Coach Racky was awesome. And so it really propelled the whole coach interview.
It sure did. And one of the things that we didn't talk about, it didn't pull out of the interview there, was the type of season that they went on and had, culminating in another state championship.
His 10th, yeah.
His 10th. And that'll be something I'm sure we'll have him on soon in another episode. And it's going to be fun to talk with him and maybe play back some of the things that we talked about in our interview last year. And just see where he's at or what he thinks of some of those comments, right? Or some of those part of that discussion.
Yeah, it's great to have it. We've done it with Coach New already and asked about some of his comments from last year. And I know that he liked hearing it. So I think that's a great thing to have to play back for him. And not that we're going to do any gotchas, on this.
Right. We won't. And the other thing, Andrea, I thought this was the first coach interview. I went back and looked at what you put together as far as some of the things we were going to post on social media and the artwork. And I remember looking at it when you sent it over, and I thought, this is just perfect. How the heck did she put this together? So how did you go about finding the right picture of Coach Racky and what you were going to kind of put behind it? Because I think it all really kind of tied in, really well with our actual episode, what we talked about.
Yeah, I was excited to do that because I never had done anything like this, to try and come up with like a thumbnail for an Instagram, for Spotify, for all of that. So, I mean, as far as the picture, he just happened to be very kind of coachy, photogenic in the way he was. So like, that was just a simple Google search to find the right picture. I'm like, oh, this could be kind of cool. But like you guys, like I look back at that first couple of artworks that I did, and I think, wow, that's not good work. Like I could have done that better. And I feel like now I've had more creative freedom and feel like I can go a little bit more free with what we're saying, not just like, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely get it.
We feel the same way about our interviews. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So we did do other coach interviews. I forget how many we actually did, but when I went back to look at some of this, I thought I would really like to pull out of some of the coach interviews we did, especially with those interviews we did for teams or coaches who won the state championship, right? So we interviewed Coach Passarella from DePaul Prep. We also interviewed Coach Bukowski from Montini. Both won state championships, right? So in the interview that we did, we asked some different types of questions, but I would always finish up the interview with, if we're talking next year, Coach, you tell me what you hope that we're talking about as far as your team's football, how you did this year, where the program is headed, those kinds of things. So let's listen to Coach Passarella, okay?
Yep.
All right.
Welcome to the Varsity Voices. We have another special edition of From the Coach's Office. This week we have the head coach of the DePaul Prep Rams, Michael Passarella. Coach, welcome to the virtual studio.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you guys having me on today, and looking forward to chatting some ball and CCL.
Awesome, awesome. Well, sometimes there's a feeling that schools that there are schools with their pro football program on the rise. I get that feeling about DePaul Prep. Why do you?
So I'm going to stop that right there.
Yeah.
Because, and then I'll play the rest of it. But when I listened to that, I thought, oh my gosh, how telling is that, Dan? You nailed it. But I remember we both talked about that before that interview. And what gave us that feeling that
I'm surprised that I asked that question, because I felt like I felt that way after we interviewed him. Like I thought that my first notion of that came after the interview.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was looking at or reading or anything that gave me the impression that they were a team on the rise. But they certainly were. So
yeah, you are the true prognosticus.
the true one.
Yeah. Here we go. All right, let's listen to the rest of it.
What do you think that is?
So I'm going into year 6 right now. When I started, we had 450 kids in the building, and I had about 48 kids total in the program for 2 levels. Going into year 6, we're going to top out at 1,400 kids in the building, and our program right now numbers are going to be at 175. So our trajectory is on the upswing.
Yeah, so I just have one more question, last question for you, Coach. So a year from now, we're sitting down again for another interview. What do you hope we're talking about as far as your program is concerned, and how things will have gone for you this year?
Well, obviously, the first goal, we kind of talk about what our ultimate goal is, and that's always winning a state championship, right? You always want to be at the top. You got to try in hindsight to teach the kids. You got to take it one day at a time, and goal number 1 is just getting to the playoffs. And if we get into the playoffs, then anything kind of happens. So a year from now, I'm hoping that we kind of got this broken streak of not being in the playoffs, which I think we're going into 11 years now, where DePaul Gordon hadn't been to the playoffs. I think last year, I think it was 2015, so I think we're going into year 9. So I'm hoping you're talking about a team that's been able to break that streak and went to the playoffs, and I'm hoping we can sit here and say defending state champs, and most likely 4A/5A, however that kind of shakes out. So,
pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not only how foretelling your comment was, or your question was to him, but also his answer. And the other thing I think about when I listen to that is making the playoffs would have been a very lofty goal for them. And if they made it to the playoffs, their season was good, right? Because it'd been 9 years, right? Since they've even been to the playoffs. But to then make it to the playoffs and then go to the state championship and win the state championship, how amazing is that for that program?
Yeah, it was a great run. I mean, and they had a great group of senior leaders, mixed in with talented underclassmen and guys that had been in the program. They clearly bought in, so you could see the momentum building throughout the year. A little stumble going into the playoffs against Bennett. They didn't win their division. So that, had they lost at Coal City, the game I covered, and that, again, that would have been a very acceptable, successful season. But to take it all the way and be able to put that state championship banner up in their gym is that's really, really cool.
Yeah, it is. All right, so we also did an interview with Coach Bukowski from Montini, asked a lot of the same types of questions. Here, let's listen in on what Coach Bukowski has to say here.
Last question. A year from now, we're sitting down again for another interview. What do you hope we're talking about as far as Montini is concerned and Montini football?
Well, I think the number one thing is the continuation, of our program, to keep growing and reaching. I say this, and it's the truth. We really struggled coming out of COVID, our program. And it was a combination of a few things. We had lost some coaches, some things were going on here and there, talent level, this and that. So when we got out of COVID, we really struggled for a couple years. And then, in this business, when you're competitive, like in the Catholic League, it's unforgiving. We tell our guys that, guys, no one's feeling sorry for Montini. If you're going to hang your head and act like somebody's going to give you a break or whatever, you're out of your mind. And so I am very proud of the fact that we were able to turn this thing around and get back on an ascending path. Last year we lost a tough game in the semifinal. We had the lead till about 3 minutes left, and Byron was a very, very good team, had some excellent players, and the next week they go in the state championship game and they win 69-7. So I don't know if that makes me feel worse or better. Teetering on the edge of the cliff in the middle of December, about ready to jump. I don't know what kept me from jumping, whether they were that good or we just blew our chance. But it just shows what we've been through, and I'm so happy and proud of these young men. Because, as we mentioned earlier in this show, in this day and age, it's so easy to quit and pull up the anchor and move and transfer and leave and do all those things. And I'm not saying that anyone who does that is wrong. I'm not judging anybody, but it's just a little bit of a different scenario than when we grew up. So that's what I hope we're talking about. If that means being in the state championship game, great. If that means winning the state championship, great. But these guys deserve how I feel, and every coach feels this way. But I know my seniors especially really deserve to have a great year this year, and so that's what I hope we're talking about in the year.
Yes, so they definitely had a great year.
Yeah, he's great.
Right.
These coaches were just so good at the interviews. Hearing him again, it makes me excited to have him back on. But yeah, he was spot on, and he touched a little bit on what I think we ended up talking a lot about, maybe in the off season, and the transferring and pulling up anchors and going. That's kind of the easy path, and not that there's no reason to do it, and we've talked about that forever. But interesting to hear what he thought, and you can now, listening back, you can kind of hear that he felt like they were pretty good.
He knew they were good.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah, good senior class. It's a big
senior
deal.
Heavy team
Yep.
that have been playing together for a while. And you could tell that Montini team with those seniors and the senior leadership, that they were a real family, right? I mean, that's the feeling that team gave me. They were brothers in arms, and you could tell it. And
well, they also were all in on what we were doing, which was really cool. It was great to have. The feedback was very strong from the Montini parent group, and they had people call in. They invited us to games. They met us when we got to the games. It made you and I feel pretty special. The games we went to. So they definitely earn it. There's nothing that comes cheap. And, it's funny, in that interview and hearing it back, that was the word. I was always looking for the word that Coach said, and I could have gone back and listened, but I didn't. So when we talk about the schedule being a meat grinder, and all the tough schedule, he used unforgiving. Right. And that's another adjective that we can add on to the schedules for the Catholic League.
So, Andrea, the two DePaul Prep and Montini, both of those teams, schools, programs were all in, like Dan just mentioned. Could we see that from the social media aspect and things that we posted out there? I feel like both DePaul Prep and Montini, and some other schools as well within the Chicago Catholic League, but I do feel like those two were really all in from a standpoint of viewing our social media and listening to our podcasts and that kind of thing. Did you see that too?
Absolutely. I know definitely with Montini, they reposted a lot. So Coach reposted it, I believe, even like on his own or his wife's. They reposted it a lot. So which gives just more views. You get more family members that don't maybe know we exist. So they see that the coach has reposted it, the school has reposted it. So that's always a big deal, I believe, when you have the schools buying in. What you're doing.
Their assistant coaches were bought in too. They would repost and share, and their athletic director as well. So that and it did. I can remember early in the season thinking, wow, whenever we say the word Montini, the posts and listens really go up, which is great.
It was great. So after the season, Dan, we talked about how we might shift gears because there weren't games to talk about anymore.
Right.
We do know of some other podcasts, not necessarily high school sports, but they kind of shut down right after the season and they wait for the next season to start. But you and I decided we did not want to do that. And we thought that we could do a variety of different things that would continue to be of interest to our listeners, right? Maybe even expand our listenership as well. One of the things we talked about was let's talk about some of the trending topics or the important topics in high school sports. And we'll talk about them. We'll see if we can get some experts on to talk about it as well. And again, it felt like you and I just kind of jumped in and said, all right, let's do this. Who do we want to talk to about NIL? And he said, how about if we talk to the CEO of the NFHS, right? National Federation of High School Sports. And that's Dr. Carissa Niehoff. And again, just reach out with an email. And she said, sure, I'll come on.
I was
We were
always
like,
amazed when
yeah.
we get those return emails.
I know. And we were like, uh-oh, now we got to have something to talk to her about. Right? So we did talk to her about a variety of topics, and she was a great guest.
Yeah.
I wanted to play you the clip of where one of the topics we talked to her about was NIL and how that is now extending down into high school and what her feelings were in regards to that. So listen to her thoughts here. So you did note in your article, Dr. Niehoff, that there are some beneficial trickle-down effects from the higher levels of sports. You also highlighted the importance of holding the line on certain principles. What lessons do you think high school sports programs should embrace from college or professional sports, and which should they, in your opinion, actively avoid?
I will absolutely tell you where we hold the line. And if there's a hill to die on, from our perspective, it's first around NIL. We all agree that the three of us, our kids, anybody, any human being owns their own name, image, and likeness. And we know that our young people, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be influencers, and they're more brilliant than me on how to do that, for sure. And we support that kids have an opportunity to make money on their name, image, and likeness. What we really stand firm on is that they're not entering into professional contracts using their NIL while representing the high school, wearing that high school jersey. They own their NIL. They don't own the high school jersey.
Yeah, so that could have been somebody talking about college versus high school, in my opinion. It was almost like there's been such an avalanche regarding NIL that, boom, they've just kind of given up on even saying it can't be done in high school. It was just like, we're going to grasp onto this kind of final thing here, and that's the hill we're going to die on, as Dr. Niehoff quoting her. But it's just amazing to me how quickly some of these things are happening and pushing down, like she said, from college to high school right now.
Yeah. And, it was, I think that's an artwork on, I think I remember there was like dollar signs and arrows with transferring and things. And then the music, Andre also picks our music that goes with the Instagram.
Right. Yeah.
And, we've got a Spotify playlist out there.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Is awesome.
I listen to it when I go on my walks.
Yes. It's a good one. So, that's what I remember about. Obviously, she was great and that, but the artwork really matched. It drew a lot of people. And Andre, if I remember right, that's been our most widely viewed or as far as from a social media perspective, clicked on or linked episode on Instagram, right? Outside of the football ones?
Outside the football ones, yes.
Yeah, I think what numbers did you give me for that one as far as impressions? Was it over 4,000
on that? Yeah.
4,500, I think was the number that you gave me. So, it makes a difference, the stuff that you do, Andrea. And along with the great content, Joe, I feel like several steps along the way, we've had something that's come up that we were like, oh boy, we've got to up our game here. And
Right.
that
Yeah.
was a moment for me too. I was like, oh, got to be locked in for this one and have some good questions. And it always helps when the guest does such a great job of expanding upon it. And she was awesome.
She was. And I was wondering, Andrew, how much thought do you put into, what you're going to include in the social media and the artwork and the music, especially when it's regarding maybe a sensitive type topic, or somebody who we're interviewing that happens to be a certain level where you
Sure.
don't want to offend them, you don't want to do this. I mean, how much thought goes into that when you put that together?
I think I always do run it by, like, hey, I want to pick this song, because you never want to offend anyone. I always try and make it personal with all of the different posts. And I've gotten much better at it. Like we keep going back to, I've gotten much better trying to personalize each post, whether it's the music, whether it's something that you guys may have talked about during the podcast. But the music has been very fun. If all else fails, I think you kind of fall back on humor. So the NIL one, I think we put like "Take the Money and Run" was the song. So so it's always easy to fall back on humor when you need to.
Right, it is. But we didn't just cover NIL with Dr. Niehoff. We have the other kind of major topic around high school sports. Is in regards to transfers, Dan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I think transfers is up here. NIL, while a growing topic, is still lagging way behind. I think the transfer, and we've talked about how those things interact, but yeah, the transfer thing is is way bigger, and we're gonna start talking about that a little more. I said in the last episode, I've always, and this is probably comes back to, I don't know, my days, but it was always such a huge deal when one person transferred, and I didn't know how much we should talk about it, but I think you're going to have so much influence on some of these teams, games, divisions, conference, state titles from players who have transferred that it's got to be talked about.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the NFHS, as well as the high school associations around the country, are under a barrage right now, as far as some of these things are concerned. And listen to Dr. Niehoff talk about what maybe the number one topic among the high school associations might be.
We just less than 2 weeks ago met with every single state executive director in the country. The number one concern and challenge for them, and it's got a legislative focus on it, is their rules and regulations specific to transfers. Why do we think that's become a problem? I think because we've forgotten a little bit that, especially in high school, these are student athletes. And if we just allow kids to move schools for athletic purposes, number one, their academic development is fragmented. It's broken, it's inconsistent. We want these kids to get through high school. Number two, their social development becomes fragmented. And with that sort of disruption for schools themselves, having been a former high school principal, when kids come and go, it leaves an impact on classes, on teachers, on the environment of the school, on the families, and on the teams. Another element to this is the issue of displacement. If students leave and just enter into another school, somebody might get displaced. And now what do we do to address those kids, those student athletes? So it's a very complicated sort of lineup of dominoes that in the high school space is really disruptive.
So one of the things that she said there towards the end, the word that she used was displacement. And I remember you kind of picked up on that, Dan, because it was something that you hadn't really thought about in regards to transfers. Here's another thing that affects high schools, high school programs, high school kids. And I feel like when she said that and used that word, that really kind of resonated with you and kind of put it all into kind of a wider focus as far as transfers and what it might do to the
Yeah, it's and we hadn't really talked about that part of it. I thought that was a great answer, by the way. The fragmented, social development, academic, and then the displacement of where that player is going and what that does to the team aspect. And while we hadn't thought of it, as soon as I brought it over to Andrea in marketing, she said, "Oh, it's like Everybody's All American, right? The TV show that's on, what's it on?
Right.
Is it on the UPN or WB? Anyway,
WB,
Netflix. Yeah.
Netflix
And
now.
it's literally like the first episode, this superstar transfers in and displaces a guy who does not have a very good run of things that happen to him because of that displacement. And I didn't even put two and two together, but that's why I don't have a marketing mind at all. But yeah, it is something that you don't necessarily think about. But it happens, and you don't ever hear about what happened to the player who didn't get a chance to play, or if there's a double transfer, if a kid's transferring and he didn't really want to leave. That's kind of a lousy aspect to this that we probably doesn't get enough discussion.
Yeah, I agree. So over the course of time, and we didn't plan this just kind of happened, in my opinion, and I'll be interested to hear yours as well. But we kind of settled in on what I'll call playlists, different types of episodes that covered the same thing. Look at, like, say, the coaches' interviews. That could be one specific kind of playlist.
Sure.
We talked about doing what we call the predictions episode, right? Where maybe Wednesday or Thursday, it was our predictions episode where we would go through the games and we would, you and I would both kind of predict what we thought who was going to win. And at one point, something happened in one of those episodes, and listen to this. I think I saw somewhere that, a couple other prognostikists. It's funny, isn't it? All right, hold on.
Every single time.
Two, and we are back with what we're calling our prognosticus episode. That is the mythological creature that we introduced in episode, I think, 18, which for our listeners, they can go back and listen to it if they want.
Yes, it was a great moment. Maybe best for brothers, but man, it was a great moment. I have laughed several times thinking of that moment.
Yes, the prognosticus is the mythological creature who predicts football scores for the Chicago Catholic League, and winners, not scores, winners. Yeah.
We can't pick scores. We can barely pick winners.
All right, so that turned into kind of a playlist for us throughout the year, and
we took that malaprop,
right,
and turned it into something.
Yes,
and then marketed that as well.
Right. We not only turned it into something, but Andrea, I want to ask you this question because I'm interested to hear how you came up with the vision of the prognosticus from an image standpoint or from an artwork standpoint, because I have a feeling that's probably the favorite artwork of our listeners. And the other thing is, that did resonate with some of the people that we talked to, some of our listeners, when we went out to some of the schools. I remember one of the coaches at Montini just blurted out, "Prognosticus." And I thought, yes, something's working there. And I think a lot of it had to do with, the image of the prognosticus as well. How did you come up with that?
Well, when you had originally said what you were thinking, I was not understanding what you kept saying. It's this wise, I don't even know if you said animal, but it's just in my head, it stuck
creature.
Out. Then it's got to be an owl. It's going to be an owl. Those are
right.
Owls are wise. So we just kind of went from there. And luckily, the image that we were able to create looked good in black and white. It looked good in color. It looked good. We put costumes on it several times. So it was a good creature, if you will, to put into artwork and make him go wherever you guys were going. I think, and I just looked it up. It looked like it was week 3 when Prognosticus made his first appearance.
Made his debut, right?
Mm-hmm.
The week before that was where I made the mistake in pronouncing the word and spoke it into existence, like we've done with other things as well. Yes. I do think if we were ever to create merchandise, just say T-shirt or whatever, then the first one, the number one thing we would have to create is something with the prognosticus, for sure.
For sure.
Yes.
We'll get you one, and you can do
yeah,
that.
we need ones for our prognosticus episodes.
Yes.
Hats. Yeah.
Hats, for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. All that.
Yeah.
Coffee mugs. I know. I always say coffee mugs. I don't know why, but I do. I want a coffee mug with prognosticus on it. Yeah.
Probably better than a shot glass.
It probably is. You're right. The only other thing I'll mention about prognosticus, Dan, is the one time we talked about, and I don't have the clip of this, but I do remember it. I think I asked you the question of what your prognosticus sounds like in your head. And do you remember what your answer was?
Yeah, it sounds like the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park, scratching its nails and clicking
Scratching,
on my
screeches,
window.
clicks. Yeah.
Yes.
All that.
Yes.
And do you remember what my answer was?
It sounds like Dad.
It sounds like an old Italian
An old
guy.
Italian.
Yeah. And it still does. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think this year, as we get into more of our prognosticus episodes, we'll have to lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're going to try and attach some voices to them, right? You
Oh,
won't
yeah.
be able to understand mine unless you speak Jurassic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But so that was another kind of playlist. We had the coach interviews, we had the prognosticus episodes. We also had what we call Friday Night Blitz. And you explained to our listeners, Dan, where that came from, why we came up with Friday Night Blitz.
That was kind of the original premise, was to keep people updated on the scores. Again, going back to coaching, I can remember our games finishing, being in the coach's office, and all the coaches, while you're celebrating or you're angry or whatever it might be, and the film might be playing in the background, and but everyone's scrolling their phone and saying, "How did they do? How did they do? How did they do?" And everyone's like, "Oh, I got this. Well, that's 3 quarters ago, and I have a more updated one." And it used to drive me crazy. I'd be like, "Why can't there be one place where we can go and get scores for these games?" And so that was kind of the thought behind, boy, if we could be that one-stop shop for the Catholic League, and a lot of this is built on the fact that the Catholic League is I think we said this in the first episode, a mega conference.
Yeah.
There's 24 teams. So there's enough meat on the bone to try and cover, and getting those scores is great for our purposes as a coaching staff. While I'm interested, I didn't necessarily need scores from downstate or anyone even in our conference that wasn't in our conference. And that's not to say that it didn't matter, but it didn't matter as much to me, to hear how teams did, or if there were upsets within our conference or our division within the conference. So that was kind of what drove Friday Night Blitz. And so that is, I think you came up with the name, but we wanted to have an avenue, and we felt like there was enough information and live information, which we talked about with Susie, that we could provide, a service, have some fun along the way, make it entertaining, at least hope to, and do a live episode on Friday nights. And while it takes your Friday nights away from you in the fall,
Right,
it was a lot of fun.
It was. And here's our first, listen to this. I think this is our first intro to Friday Night Blitz. All right, so here we are, the Varsity Voices podcast with our inaugural episode of Friday Night Blitz, Dan. And you and I have been sitting here for the last several hours, and we've been watching some of the broadcasts. We've been monitoring some of the text feeds, as well as getting some chats from different people that we're working with. So we've got some information, but not as much as we would like, right?
Yeah, it is the broadcasting. So our thought was, I guess I'll back up. Our thought was to be able to do this by leveraging the broadcast center out there, right? And Huddle, NFHS, some schools do it on their own, and disjointed is the word I'm thinking of, and struggling with some of the feeds, some of the cameras, and I don't want to complain, but it is going to. Some are much better than others, the broadcasts.
Yeah. So that, as you mentioned, that was our first live video episode. We were doing audio primarily or exclusively before that. So there was a lot more that kind of went into that from a technical standpoint. And we knew it was going to be difficult with, how many games going on. I think you and I were so happy when the preseason was over, because then the game shrunk that we had to try and cover. But still, it's more of a technical challenge than anything else, I think.
It is trying to find where games are at, and I'm going to use Dr. Niehaus' word, fragmented,
Yes.
rather than disjointed. Is still probably going to be an issue. I'm going to guess it gets a little bit better.
Maybe.
Susie probably could say, well, you should have seen it 5 years ago when I started doing this.
Right.
I'm guessing it has gotten better and will continue to improve as the years go by.
Yeah, and Andrea, one of my favorite pieces of artwork is the Friday Night Blitz one that you put together. There's just something about it. But you want to hear something else that's funny? I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but when we were all kind of talking initially about what should the Friday Night Blitz thumbnail or artwork look like, what should we post on social media and that, you sent out a couple of options, and looking at them, and when I looked at the names of the options you sent out, one of them, which was just Dan, it was just kind of you and I, our faces or pictures, and it was Andrea named it or titled it Boring Blitz. I said, I for sure am not going to pick that one. It says Boring Blitz. What didn't you like about that, Andrea?
I don't remember if it was just the colors or what, but I had really liked the pop art one. And then there was one version where you guys were moving and dancing. So that was just like, much more catchy. And the other one was just kind of boring.
Just our heads.
Just our heads. Just our faces.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that says something about the look of me and you, Dan.
It does.
We are boring to look at, for sure. Yes, we are. So I would say that's like another thread of episodes. Sure. And hopefully, like you said, we'll get better at them this year, or they'll go better. But I thought they went fine as we went along last year.
Knowing what to expect is a big deal.
Yeah, and we have one last kind of thread of different episodes that we really had a lot of fun with, and I think really resonated with people as well as with teams and the kids and the players and the coaches. So listening to this. Oh, there he is. There he is.
It's our guy. Yep.
There he is.
His timing is everything. He knows.
That is Zuko. For anybody listening. And Zuko is he's the sponsor of our weekly award. He wouldn't even let me talk.
No, he is. It's Zuko's Dog of the Week, and you get a little taste of just why if someone happens to stray onto our patio, what Zuko's all about. So he's I said before, when I play with him in the backyard, I feel like he's the perfect defensive player. So it's a defensive award, Joe. We watched some games, got some information about some other games, talked to some people who were at games, and so we had a good group to choose from. A lot of great performances out there this week. So as part of our recap, we will be designating our first Zuko's Dog of the Week.
And that grew from that, Dan, to us going out actually to the practice fields or the different fields where for the players we had designated or won the Zuko's Dog of the Week, and actually bringing Zuko along for the presentation of the dog tags, which you've got right there. What I want to hear and what I think our listeners want to hear, Dan, is what was it like putting Zuko in the car and driving out to, say, DePaul Prep or Marist or St. Rita? How was it?
And mostly because the traffic, right? And so I think part of it was knowing we had to be there at a certain time, getting the dog in the car. The weather in late fall, as we did these presentations, was iffy. He was iffy. He would start to get anxious once we were about an hour into any drive. So he wanted to be out the window. All these things played into it. It was funny because the coaches loved it. They loved it. I was surprised by that. By when we started doing it, and coaches saying, "Hey, are you going to bring the dog out?" because I would always be like, maybe I won't bring the dog this week. And they weren't having it. So,
No, they
so
wanted the
Zuko,
dog there.
they
They
wanted
all
the
did.
dog there. Not all the players loved the dog, but
Yeah,
but
that
the
was
coaches
interesting.
really liked it.
Yeah, for sure. The coaches liked it, and I think some of the players liked it. Some you could tell were not dog people, right? But some of them were. And what I liked about Zuko is he wasn't shy, right? When whoever won the award came up to get the dog tags from you, Zuko was right there, maybe putting a paw up on him, or give him a little nudge with his mouth or nose or whatever it might be. And I remember you were worried that he's going to chomp down on one of their hands or something at some point. But Andrea, were you at all worried about how Zuko might be out at some of the fields in front of all the teams?
Yes, that's why I never went. It was much easier for me to not have to deal with it. Yeah, I do remember one of the pieces of artwork or when Dan, I think we did video, and whoever received the award at the time was not a dog person, which is fine. And so we kind of did some creative cut and paste, little Photoshop to move the dog by him for the picture because he did not want to even be close to Zuko to take a picture.
That was the first one. That was Isaac Alexander, I'm pretty sure, from Montini. Yeah. Because I've looked at that and I thought he does not look like a dog person. You know who I think was the most of a dog person of the player who received it? Do you have one that you think, Dan, or not?
I don't.
I
don't
do.
remember anyone really, really embracing it and like letting him climb all over him or anything.
Look at Brad Fitzgibbon, the defensive tackle from St. Marist. Gosh darn it. I get those two teams mixed up all the time. I don't know why. But anyways, I think Zuko comes up and puts his paws kind of on the top of his thighs. And Brad Fitzgibbon leans over and like gives him a pet, on the head, which I think Zuko loves. So yeah.
Not surprising.
Yeah. So, when I look back on that and doing that, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do it again this year.
Oh yeah.
I think what a great idea that was, Dan, to do that. And, I think Zuko loved it too.
Oh, he loved it.
Yes.
It was, while it was torture being in the car and getting to the way home was a breeze because he would get so excited. He wore himself out. And then that evening was great here because he also was worn out that night. So everything but the car ride there. So it's got to be, I've got to plan it. So I have something for him to do. Andrea would always make sure I had plenty of snacks for Zuko and me. If I didn't, it was a hot dog sometimes, then Zuko and I would share it. But
one bite for you, one bite for me. Yeah.
One bite for you, 1, 2 for me. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing it again. It'll be nice if we can coordinate, I have to talk to the coaches about this, coordinate so that he's there the next week, so we can do it, week one. And the weather was a big thing. Going to St. Francis in a snowstorm essentially was the most challenging one. And they've got a little woods area around. He was a disaster. He was a mess by the time he got back in the car. So but it's fun. I think the players, coaches, and the fans really like it. I think, Andrea, we looked at our top Zuko award winner engagement was Avery Bellis, I think, from DePaul, if I have that right.
That sounds about right.
That was one that was highly viewed. So anyway, it always gets a lot of attention. The social media things we can do with the video is great, and we'll make it better this year.
All right, good. All right, so before we wrap up or finish up here, I've got one more question for both of you. And I'll start with you, Andrea. So if you're looking at the upcoming year and the season starts, what would you like to see change-wise, or any changes, any tweaks, any different things that we would do this upcoming year that we didn't do in year one?
I think I liked when you had, was it Luke Doyle from Bennett on, when you actually had one of the players on? I think that'd be cool to have some different players from different schools come on. Mm-hmm. Whether it's either before their game or if they're, big rival coming up or something like that, or maybe even try and get one from each team, and talk about different rivalries. Might be kind of cool.
I like that. That's a
That
good
would
idea.
be. Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. I think we've talked about this. I think it might be fun for you guys to go out to a game, to do a tailgate or something on a Friday night. So where you're actually either broadcasting from there or segment from there. But go to a school. Go and check it out. That'd be
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, very good. All right. And Dan?
I'm gonna hop on. I would love to do something from location, on location at some point on a Friday night or Saturday.
Right.
I think that's kind of the next step with this. I'd like to see us. I like the idea of more players too. I think that makes, and we want to do that. That's sometimes a little harder to coordinate, but maybe we can start to get that more this summer. I would love to have. I'm always amazed by the reporters and their ability to have the stats in the articles on Saturday morning or Sunday or whenever they get those. And I'd love to know how they do that. And I think us, having some stats to build off on, and this is probably just a communication thing with the coaches, but I know I don't want to pile more stuff onto their to-do list. But I would love to have have more information about the Catholic League, in a statistical format than we do now.
Right. Okay. All right, good.
How about you? What's your answer, Joe?
I'm on board with the whole kind of game day thing. I would love to do that. I think that's kind of a natural next step for us. I'd be interested to see how how popular it might be if we were to be out of school, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is before the game starts. If we would get people out there, parents, players, maybe some of the school administration, whatever it might be. Think of that kind of college game day type thing, and if we can replicate that at the high school level, I think it'd be a lot of fun. The other thing, I would love to see somebody, whether it's radio, whether it's ESPN or something along those lines, but I'd like to see somebody pick us up.
Ooh, yeah.
To do when we do one of our episodes, that it's also being broadcast there. Local ones, CHSN, Marquee, WGN, The Score, ESPN 1000, any of those. We don't have to be on every day. I'd like to be on once a week with them, maybe, especially during the high school season, right? They could.
Here's your time slot, guys. 2 a.m. to 2:30 on Sunday morning.
All right. So anyway,
by the way, if anyone's listening, I'd take it.
Yeah, right. We would take that. So feel free to call us or email us or hit us up on social media.
Yes,
and we'll be sure to reply. But anyways, I want to wish both of you a happy anniversary of year 1 of the Varsity Voices podcast, and thank you both for everything that you've put into this over the last year to get it to this point where it is today. And I would say it's successful. So thank you to both of you.
Same to you. Thank both of you for all your efforts. I appreciate it. I think it's a lot of fun, but it continues to grow, and it's exciting, and it's a great topic, and it's one of those things when it doesn't feel like work if you love what you're doing. So.
Right. So that's a wrap on our 1-year anniversary episode. We honestly can't believe how fast it's gone, and we're so grateful for every listen, comment, share, and message that you've sent us along the way. We started this as a passion project, and thanks to you, it's grown into something really special. Here's to another year of stories, sports, prizes, and everything in between. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share the podcast. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one.